Mara, who had been standing quietly in the corner, suddenly stepped forward. She placed her small hand on the edge of the table, her eyes locked on Jake's. Her lips parted, but she did not speak. Jake leaned forward, intrigued. "What is it, Mara?" he asked gently, though he wasn't sure if she even understood him. The girl reached down and picked up her doll, holding it out to him. The doll was simple, carved from wood, but the detail in its face was striking. It looked almost lifelike in a way that unsettled him. There was a strange, almost eerie precision in the way it had been crafted. Jake took the doll from her hand, his fingers brushing hers. There was something about the feel of it. Something wrong. The eyes of the doll seemed to follow him no matter how he turned it. His breath caught in his throat as he noticed that the doll's face seemed to shift, ever so slightly. The smile deepened. Do you want me to keep it?" Jake asked, his voice trembling. Mara nodded, her wide eyes unblinking. Jake looked back at the man, unsure of what to do. "What does it mean?" The man did not answer right away. Instead, he stared at his daughter, then back at Jake. "The jungle. It sees you," he said, as if it were an ancient truth. "It knows you, and it knows when you have seen it." Jake's heart pounded in his chest. "What are you saying? I'm not going to stay here forever, am I?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he stood up, motioning toward the door. "You should rest," he said. "Tomorrow we will find out if the jungle will let you leave, or if it has already decided." Jake glanced at Mara, who still held his gaze, her silence speaking louder than words. The doll in his hand felt heavier, almost as if it had come alive in his grip. His mind raced, but he couldn't make sense of anything. With a deep sigh, he stood, following the man out into the night. The wind rustled through the trees, the jungle alive and waiting. The trial of the jungle. Jake didn't sleep that night. He lay on a straw mat inside the hut, the doll clutched loosely in his hand, its strange carved face catching the moonlight that filtered through the palm leaf roof. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the skeleton tangled in roots. The girl's eyes, the man's warning. The jungle sees you. It knows you. He wanted to believe it was just metaphor, a poetic way of describing the ruthless chaos of nature. But something deeper had begun to stir inside him, a gnawing sense that this place wasn't just alive, but aware. That the jungle wasn't just a setting, it was a force, a gatekeeper, a judge. By morning, a heavy mist clung to the forest. The man, whose name Jake still hadn't learned, stood at the edge of the clearing, waiting. He held a long staff carved, with symbols Jake didn't recognize. "It is time," he said without turning around. Jake rose stiffly, the doll tucked into the pocket of his torn cargo pants. Mara watched from the doorway, her doll gone from her hands. She said nothing, but her eyes followed Jake as he stepped into the forest once more. They walked in silence. The man moved like he was part of the jungle itself, silent, smooth, gliding, over roots and through thorny underbrush as if the forest parted for him. Jake stumbled behind, every step a reminder of his human frailty. But he didn't complain. Something told him that this was more than a journey. This was the test the man had spoken of. They climbed a steep ridge, the trees thinning slightly. At the top, the man finally spoke. "Below is the basin," he said. "There is a tree that marks the center. You will find it by its roots, which rise from the earth like hands reaching for the sky. When you find it, you will place the doll beneath it. Then you wait." Jake blinked. "That's it? I just leave the doll?" The man turned, and for the first time, Jake saw a flicker of something that resembled fear in his eyes. "No," the man said. "You offer the doll. The jungle will decide what to do with you then. Speak no words. Make no noise. If it accepts your offering, you may leave. If not—" He trailed off. He didn't need to finish the sentence. Jake nodded slowly, his throat dry. He turned toward the basin and began the descent alone. The basin was unlike any part of the jungle he had seen before. The air was heavier, and the sound of birds and insects fell away, replaced by a strange stillness. Trees twisted around one another like lovers locked in eternal embrace. Strange red fungi clung to bark and stone. The ground pulsed with quiet, life. And then he saw it. The tree. It rose from the center of the basin like a monument, ancient, gnarled, its roots twisting up and outward like enormous fingers clawing at the sky. Its bark was black and split, and its trunk was wide enough to swallow a car. There was something sacred about it, something final. Jake approached it slowly. He reached into his pocket and withdrew the doll. Its carved face looked more alive than ever. The faint smile now almost mischievous. He knelt at the base of the tree, placed the doll gently among the roots, and stepped back. Then he waited. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Jake lost track of time, his heartbeat louder than any other sound in the basin. The jungle seemed to hold its breath. And then the wind changed. It was sudden, violent, a gust that stirred the canopy above and set the leaves, hissing in unison. The roots of the tree trembled. Jake fell to one knee, shielding his face from the swirling dust. And then the whispering began. It wasn't in a language he knew, not words exactly, but voices. Countless voices, layered, on top of one another. Some weeping, some laughing, some chanting. They rose from the trees, from the soil, from the air itself. Jake's vision blurred. He clutched his head, his skull pounding with pressure. He tried to stand, but his body wouldn't respond. Then suddenly, silence. The voices vanished. The wind stopped. The jungle returned to stillness. Jake gasped, for breath, heart racing. He looked toward the tree. The doll was gone. In its place, nestled in the crook of the roots, was a single red feather. Jake crawled forward and picked it up. It was warm to the touch, vibrant, alive. As he held it, something deep inside him shifted. A feeling he couldn't describe, like something that had been watching him had now turned away, satisfied. A path opened through the jungle before him, one that hadn't been there before. Not a trail of footprints or broken branches. A true path, wide and clear, like the forest itself was guiding him. The way out. The man was waiting at the ridge when Jake returned. He said nothing at first, simply studied Jake's face. Jake held up the red feather. The man exhaled slowly, then nodded. It has accepted you. Jake wanted to ask what it meant. Why him? Why now? But he already knew the answer didn't matter. He had passed some kind of test, ancient, spiritual, unknowable. The jungle had let him go. They returned to the hut in silence. Mara stood waiting, the same unreadable expression on her face. Jake knelt before her and handed her the feather. She took it without a word, tucking it behind her ear. Then, for the first time, she spoke. Just one word: free. By morning, the man led Jake to a different trail, one that led out of the heart of the jungle. It would take him 2 days, he said, to reach the nearest village. He gave Jake dried meat, a walking stick, and a single water skin. At the edge of the clearing, the man placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. You were not meant to come here, but you were meant to leave. Jake nodded, unsure how to respond. His voice felt useless in this place. As he turned and walked down the trail, the jungle behind him seemed to shift once more. Not darker, not lighter, simply closed. Like a door that had opened just long enough to let him through. He didn't look back. Epilogue: Jake emerged from the jungle 2 days later, covered in mud, thinner, bearded, and half delirious. The villagers who found him didn't believe his story. Not really. But they fed him and helped contact the authorities. In time, he returned to civilization. But he was never the same. He never spoke about the jungle in detail. He never photographed forests again. The wild no longer inspired him. It humbled him. He kept the red feather on his desk until the day he died. No one ever found the wreckage of the plane, or the hut, or the man and his daughter. The jungle doesn't give back what it wants to keep. But for reasons Jake never fully understood, it let him go. The end.
Thank you for watching. You can subscribe so you don't miss the next videos.